Hey everyone, it's Tom June and welcome to another UK Space News Update. Today we're going to start off with some RFA news because they've just released footage of the team carrying out the old Ace Ventura style
earthquake test
on their Redshift Orbital Transfer Vehicle, or OTV. This was a full vibration test in simulated launch mode, designed to test the structural integrity of the spacecraft itself, as well as the electronic systems on board. Obviously, getting into space is a pretty rough ride because of the sheer forces produced both by the rocket itself and in said rocket doing its best to break through the atmosphere on its way to space. That's a lot of lateral exertion and G-forces to deal with. We've certainly seen before how these forces can cause payloads that were otherwise previously healthy to suddenly not work once they reach space. So, a bit of a road test there for the OTV, and everything seems to have come out okay. RFA, as we understand, currently also have 2 first stages of their one rocket in production at their factory, in preparation for heading back to the launch pad at Saxavord. Can you believe it's been a year since this happened? Nope, me neither. But RFA seem well on their way to turning things around and getting ready to try it all over again. Next, we turn to some friends across the pond in Canada. On Friday the 29th of August, Canada's NordSpace took their Tega sounding rocket to the launch pad, one that they built no less, in an attempt to fly for the very first time. Their stream kicked off at around 9 AM UK time and saw them working on the 16-foot-long single-stage rocket powered by a single 35 kilonewton Hadfield engine, 3D printed by them. They got all the way down to T-minus 12 minutes with the rocket fully fueled before a circuit breaker in their power generator caused a malfunction in the nitrogen line quick disconnect system. So they broke for lunch and came back later that day with the problem solved, which let yours truly bring an evening live stream of their second attempt. Thank you all very much if you joined in on that one. It was a lot of fun to say the least. And things went better this time around, as the rocket was soon vertical again. But just seconds before liftoff, the ignition system's misfire detection system triggered prematurely and led to a fizzle of sparks rather than the good flamey stuff that we love, causing the system to shut down into safe mode and ending the day with an attempt so close to launch that you could consider it the best wet dress rehearsal that they could want. This looks like a software issue as opposed to a hardware problem, so it's hopefully as simple a fix as changing the parameters for misfire detection. Not to be disheartened though, because this was their first ever launch attempt, and judging by how quickly they solved their earlier issue, I've no doubt Tega will be back on the pad very soon, possibly even as soon as within the next 2 weeks. Stay tuned for a possible further live stream by myself, where, if the stars align, I'll be joined by my good buddy from down under, the Aussie knot himself, Josh Keegan. This is all pending them being granted another 5-day launch license, so we'll keep an eye on that one. And if you've not seen my video on NordSpace covering what they're all about, then go and check it out, because these guys are cool as hell, and I can't wait to see them fly. Now, moving back to the UK, and by now we've all seen the news over the past few weeks that the UK Space Agency is to be integrated into its parent department, that being the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. Something the government has positioned as a cost-cutting measure, and one designed to improve efficiency. But it seems the writing has been on the wall for the UK Space Agency for quite a while, and with the current government seemingly not trusting UKSA to manage itself, has opted instead to bring it into the DSIT fold. What's true is that the DSIT was its parent group, and what's also true is that the UK Space Agency's team and name won't be going anywhere, contrary to what the mainstream media would have you believe. But the reporting and oversight will change. We all know that the level of red tape in the UK is honestly astounding, and trying to get anything to fly, whether that's a rocket or a satellite or whatever, is very difficult. The UK Space Agency was responsible for the allocation of funds to various projects, including Saxavord, Orbex, and of course the European Space Agency, of which the UK remains a large contributor, to the tune of around £1.8 billion earmarked for between 2022 and 2027. Take this report from 2024 regarding the spend levels from 2022 to 2023. It outlines that the UK Space Agency spent £647 million on space in that time, but 85% of that, some £553 million, was sent to ESA. Now, I'm not saying at all that this is necessarily a bad thing. It helped fund 3 new astronauts in John McFall, McGann Christian, and Prime astronaut Rosemary Coogan. And ESA funding has helped UK space businesses stay close to major European projects, including the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, which we'll come back to later. Furthermore, what we often see when teams or departments are merged in government sectors is a stripping of assets and resources, framed as delivering efficiency. I will, however, reserve judgment until we see this in action, as what is most definitely clear is the need to urgently cut the red tape in this country and get on with the business of getting us into space. We can't afford, quite literally to the tune of billions of pounds a year, to fall behind again like in the 1960s and 1970s. Still, it's disappointing to see the UK Space Agency being absorbed back into the DSIT rather than being given additional authority to manage the UK space industry, free of interdepartmental posturing. The UK Space Agency was supposed to be the UK's NASA, and every major spacefaring nation in the world has an independent space agency, except the UK as of April 2026. In the meantime, Astroscale, ClearSpace and D-Orbit have all had a hand in preparing regulatory sandbox for rendezvous and proximity operations, in anticipation of the first UK-led active space debris removal operations in 2028, alongside the Civil Aviation Authority and the DSIT, hopefully paving the way for the UK to become a leader in space debris removal operations. Now, this is something I've spoken about at length in previous videos. We're not going to retread all ground. Space debris is and will continue to be a big problem. The UK at least wants to position itself in a market that it hopes it can capitalise on. Coming back to something a bit more positive now, and as previously mentioned, the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, or JUICE, made yet another gravity-assisting flyby this week with a close pass of Venus to yet further increase its velocity and push it that bit further towards the all-important Jupiter encounter in a few years. Just before this flyby though, the control team had to resolve an anomaly, this one being an interruption to the communications link between the spacecraft and Earth, leading to a loss of contact. With JUICE at that point, back in July, being behind the Sun, ground teams worked through the night, some 20 hours, to attempt to send signals to the spacecraft, eventually managing to get a single command through to amplify the signal strength and rule out an issue with the onboard antennas. The issue was actually found to be a bug in the timing software, which tells JUICE when to turn the signal amplifier on and off, a cycle that takes around 16 months to complete. But the fault appears to be a simple one. If JUICE is using its amplifier when the timer restarts, the amplifier stays off after the clock resets, and that means that signals sent by the spacecraft are too weak to reach Earth. Obviously, when JUICE is at its furthest point from Earth, it requires that amplifier so that signals can be sent back to base. But with the amplifier off, nothing would get home. Hopefully, the teams are able to resolve the issue fully before JUICE's next flyby of Earth in 2026. And finally, because I fully intend to branch out more and cover non-UK space flights, on September the 4th, Astrobotic of attempted moon landing fame, but not getting out of elliptical orbit, have announced a partnership to test their in-development Zodiac reusable rockets from Andoya spaceport in Norway from 2026. Zodiac is a terrestrial lander which can refly multiple times. It serves as a test vehicle for lunar operations and can also ferry payloads on suborbital trajectories for data assessment operations and so on and so forth. Andoya will serve as a launch and landing base for Zodiac, but they'll also gain valuable experience in reusable rocket flight operations. All pretty cool, but I for one hope to see something similar from Saxavord in the future. In the meantime though, we can look forward to Astrobotic coming to Europe and carrying out their operations with Zodiac next year. So that's it for me for this episode. Sound off in the comments below and let me know what you think. And while you're there, click the subscribe button to support the channel. As usual, thank you to everyone over on Patreon for your amazing continued support, and if you would like to support the channel further, then click the link below and become a Patreon too. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Tom June, and I'll catch you next time.